Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to take a very quick look at the game Nile DeLuxor. And I apologize if I butchered that, I don't know the correct pronunciation. The game is for 2 to 6 players, ages 8 and up, with the average play time being between 30 and 45 minutes. In this game, players will be trying to harvest a variety of crops in order to score the most victory points. Let's just take a quick moment to look at the components and see how the game is played. While the only component in this game is a bunch of cards, as you can see there are a number of different card types to look at. In the upper left hand corner you've got 3 double-sided season cards. Basically these are just round trackers. These help players keep track of what round it currently is. You've got the number listed in the upper left and in the lower right hand corner. You've got 1 and 2, and then likewise 3, 4, and 5. Over here you've got this Plague of Locusts card. For obvious reasons, no one wants this card to come up during the game, unless of course you're sadistic. You've got this Flood card over here. Basically this helps players keep track of what crop can be currently harvested on a particular turn. You've got these Speculate cards. I won't go too much into this right now, but think of these as lottery cards. Players can sort of try and guess what Flood card will come up on the next turn, and if they succeed in guessing right by playing these, they're awarded something special. Again, I'll get into that in a little bit. You've also got these crop cards. There's 7 different types. Now, as far as these cards in the upper right-hand corner, this is part of the Monument expansion that comes with the game. These cards are completely optional, but just to sum this up, players will be trying to build monuments in addition to trying to harvest crops throughout the game in order to get some special abilities, which are listed right on the bottom of these different monuments. Again, these are completely optional, and for the sake of the video, I'm not going to partake in using these. In regards to game setup, the first thing that you'll want to do is place the Plague of Locust cards off to the side for the time being. You've got your season cards there, starting with Season 1. You've got your Flood card in the middle of the table, and you've got your deck of cards. But you'll actually need to remove a certain number of crop types from this deck before you actually start playing. It all depends on how many people are actually in the game. In a 2 to 4 player game, you'll need to actually remove 2 crop types. In a 5 player game, you'll need to remove 1 crop type, and in a 6 player game, you'll use all of the crops in the game. Since this is a 2 player game, I've opted to remove Castor and Flax. Again, you'll need to remove both the crop card itself as well as any Speculate cards that reference said crop. In this case, Castor, and this Castor is represented on here, and all Flax cards are removed as well as any Speculate cards that reference Flax. Finally, each player is dealt a hand of 5 cards, and the Plague of Locust card is shuffled back into the deck. Now, as I indicated earlier, the game is broken up into a series of rounds, and you can see what round it is by looking at the current season card. Now, players will alternate in taking turns during any given round, and they'll have to observe a total of 5 different phases on their turn. The first phase of a player's turn is called the Flood phase, and let's assume for the sake of argument that it is this player's turn. What the current player will do is take the top card from the draw deck and place it face up into the Flood pile. Now, it's at this point in the game that any Speculate cards on the table, usually it's the person that just went prior to the current player, these will be resolved. Now, to resolve a Speculate card, you'll take a look at the 2 crop types mentioned on the Speculate card. And as you can see here, there's lettuce and onion. Now, the lettuce does match the current Flood crop type. So what will happen is this player will be rewarded 3 cards from the draw pile to place into their hand. If a player manages to match both crop types on the card, sometimes you'll have, cards with 1 crop type on it completely, in which case you've matched both crop types. That player will instead be rewarded 6 cards. But in this case, you've got 1 match, so this player would be awarded 3 cards to place into their hand. After the Speculate cards are resolved, they are simply discarded. The second phase of a player's turn is called the Harvest phase, and all you'll do is take a look at the crop listed on the Flood pile and compare it with the cards currently in your field. If you have a match, you can take the top card from your field and place it face down into your score pile for endgame scoring. Now, it doesn't matter whose field it is. If it's this player's turn, yet that crop's matched one of the crops featured in player 2's field over here, player 2 would instead score instead of player 1. Now, in the event that a speculate card was drawn during phase 1, both of these crops featured on the speculate card would be considered whenever you're harvesting. So no matter whose turn it is, again, players will just simply harvest the appropriate crop shown. In this case, you've got wheat, so this player would harvest 1 wheat to place into their score pile, and you've got onion, so player 2 would go ahead and harvest 1 onion and place it into his score pile. In the event that the Plague of Locusts card was drawn during Phase 1, players will need to take a look and see who has the largest field on the table. The Plague of Locusts card will then consume that entire field and force those cards to be discarded. Now, after the Plague of Locusts card has taken its effect, a new card is drawn from the draw pile so that harvesting can be resolved normally. The third phase of a player's turn is trading, and trading is completely optional. A player doesn't have to do it if they don't want to. In order to trade, you can do it in one of 2 ways. You can discard 2 cards from either your hand or your storage or score pile, discard them, and then draw a new card from the draw deck to place into your hand. You can also take 2 cards either from your hand or from the score pile, discard them in order to place a new card from the deck and use it as the new flood card. In that event, a new harvest phase occurs, and that is resolved normally. The fourth phase of a player's turn is the plant or speculate phase. Now, to speculate, all you'll do is you'll take a look at your hand and place any speculate cards that you might have off to the side for the next turn of the game. Now, as far as planting goes, there's a few different things you can do, and there are some rules to consider. The first way that you can plant is to place at least 2 cards of all the same type onto the field. Now, it's very important to note that you can only have 1 crop type on the table at any one time. So that's why you see lettuce and wheat over here, and why you see onion, grape, and papyrus over here. You can't have 2 different fields of papyrus. The only way that this player can plant papyrus onto the table is by playing more cards than the other player currently has on the table. In this case, you've got 3 papyrus, and he's going to go ahead and take that action to plant at least 2 cards of all the same type of crop right here, and in that event, this player has to discard that card from the table just to maintain the status quo. Another way that the player may make use of the plant action is to play exactly 2 crop cards of different types, one of which may be played onto an existing field. In this case, the player is going to go ahead and opt to play a papyrus card onto an existing field, and for his other crop type, he'll go ahead and start a new lettuce field. Again, you'll want to make sure that no one else has that crop already on the table. Finally, a player may also plant by playing any number of cards that they want onto their existing fields. In this case, the player has a lettuce card and 2 wheat, and they happen to have a lettuce and a wheat field. So they can go ahead and place their wheat cards on top of their existing wheat field, and their lettuce card, this lettuce card on top of the existing lettuce field. The 5th phase of a player's turn is called the draw phase. All you'll do is just simply take 2 cards from the draw pile and place it into your hand. That'll end the current player's turn, and the next player will take their turn. Now, players will continue taking turns in this manner until the draw pile runs out. Whenever that happens, all of the cards featured in the flood pile and all of the cards featured in the discard pile will be shuffled together, placed face down, and a new season will be revealed. If it is on Season 1, for example, you'll want to flip this over to Season 2. If Season 2 is showing, then you'll need to move this card aside so that Season 3 is showing, and so on and so forth. And the game will end after 5 complete seasons. At the very end of the game, each player will sort out their score pile into different columns. They'll place the crop types that they have the most of off to the right-hand side, and the crop types that they have the least of on the left-hand side. If you are playing with a total of 5 crops, you'll have 5 columns. Your final score is whatever you have in your leftmost column. It is very possible that you'll have nothing in your leftmost column if you managed not to harvest any of that particular crop type during the game. In this case, the player down here will have won because they have one card here and there are 0 cards here. The final score would be 1-0. In the event that there is a tie, in this case, the leftmost card, there is a tie 1-1. You would go to the next column over. In this case, it's 2-1, so this player would still win. And there you have it. This is just a very quick look at the game, Nile DeLuxor. I didn't get to cover all of the rules found in the manual, but this should just give you a general idea as far as how the game is played. You can check out my review at www.dadsgamingaddiction.com, or you can click on the link in the below description that'll take you there as well. This is Vince, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.